Welcome all of you, okay, and thank you for coming. Yes, Affiliate Capital, with our group, more than 40 years in existence, and in 16 countries, including here in Chicago, we want to be your partners in finance. Whether you want to trade in Asia or trade US futures, we are here, okay, we're there for you. So you're here today, okay, because some way or other, you believe in Asia, and you know that the two biggest growth stories, India and China, are still alive and kicking. Despite all these high political risks in the world, what is happening in North Korea, conflicts in the Middle East, and even a global shift towards protectionism policies, dampening export trades, the real truth is in the numbers. So world economic growth has actually improved from last year. In fact, the WTO recently upgraded its forecast for 2007 from 2.4% to 3.6%. And China's economy is no longer decelerating, and it's back in a growth of 6.9%. And according to IMF, the estimated growth rate of Asia is set to grow by 5.5% this year, up from 5.3% last year. And there is still a lot of room to grow in Asia. When I moved here to Chicago with Cameron 9 years ago to start this business, there were two distinct things that struck me about Chicago. The first, people are really crazy about sports. In Chicago, there's not one, but two baseball teams, the Cubs and the White Sox, one American hockey team, the Blackhawks, one basketball team, the Bulls, and even one football team. Okay, so no wonder people are crazy about sports. The other thing about Chicago that struck me, and also the reason why we moved to Chicago, is that Chicago is the center of the world for the derivatives market. As you know, the biggest derivative markets in the world, CME is here. The spirit of the trading floor, right, permeates, seeps through the streets of Chicago. Although the trading floor is not what it was, you still hear stories of how people made their riches and their poverty and lost everything in one day. Okay, in this two world of sports and the trading floor, as many of you know, okay, the thing in common is that there are only two clear outcomes. There is a winner and there is a loser. The winner is the one who is carrying the ball to the finish line. In the futures market, where markets are marked to market daily, when you win, at the other end, there is also a loser. So for these worlds, we fight till death, quite literally to win. We train hard, we push our bodies, we do what we can to get the extra edge over others in order to win. Because anything less than that, when you win, there is a loser at the other end, right? So the attitude of a sportsman or a trader, I observe, my observation, tends to permeate into the rest of our lives, whether it is relations between governments, between countries, company to companies, and even in our personal lives. When we think that we have the best idea or that we are right, we need to fight and stand our grounds and convince the enemy, our spouse, that they are wrong. They need to listen to us. And you don't have to shout, right, to protest. You don't have to shout. All you need to do, you can sometimes be the silent majority who refuse to budge. The more we demand our way, the less we get our way. The more we push, the more the other sides try to push. And what happens? We all lose. So perhaps there's a better way. So any Kung Fu master will tell you that Kung Fu is not just squatting and learning a few strokes here and there. To learn Kung Fu, you must learn the philosophy. And the philosophy of Kung Fu is steeped very much in the Eastern philosophy, okay, of Taoism, the way, right? And so I want to share with you a familiar image of the yin and yang symbol, which you probably all know about. And if you look carefully at our logo, you can see to the yin and yang element of it. So the yin and yang principle describes how seemingly opposite or contrary forces are complementary and interconnected. So if you think about it, look at the thing carefully, you'll see neither yin and yang are absolutes, but they're actually relative to each other. Nothing is completely yin, nothing is completely yang. In fact, each aspect contains the aspect pointing for the other aspect. So example, the day becomes night, and the night becomes day. And the yin and yang are independent upon each other so that the definition of one requires for the other definition to be complete. The other interesting to note, there is the seed of the opposite on each one. They are not static, they flow together. And together they form a circle. One effect of this is one aspect increases and the other decrease to maintain the overall balance of the whole. So perhaps if you look at life, not like he is wrong, I am right, but that while we are right, we are also wrong. And while we are wrong, we are also right. So we need to look at the interconnection of things. Look at harmony, because there are no real absolutes. And wholeness can only be achieved when we're able to balance and work with the two opposing forces. So to further illustrate the importance of this interconnectedness, let me share with you the story of Abby and Bethany from Minnesota that are conjoined twins. Okay, each of them have a separate head, a separate heart, a stomach, a spine, a pair of lungs, and spinal cord. And each twin controls her half of her body, operating one arm and one leg. So when they were born, the parents decided not to surgically separate them after learning that it was very unlikely that any of them will survive after the operation. So at a very young age, they had to learn to walk and even ride a bike. In fact, in their adulthood, they even passed their driving test by each having to take separately the test twice, of course, right? So close your eyes for a minute, okay, and imagine what it would be like for Abby and Bethany if they did not work together, if they just decided that their way was right and their leg had to take the first step. They would never learn to walk. I'm not asking you to agree everything. I'm not asking you to agree the whole world, but at least be willing to try to see the other person's point of view. We need to give voice to the unheard and to be willing to sit at the table to discuss. I used to think courage meant speaking up. It meant ignoring the critics, standing up for what you believe to be true. But now I see another part of courage. What is courage? Courage is vulnerability in disguise. Courage is vulnerability in disguise. Courage is the willingness to look at the other side of the coin, no matter how hard it is, to try to admit that we don't have all the truths, but we're willing and even willing to fight for the other person's point of view. Okay, you might be thinking, what on earth is Lynette talking to do with Trading Asia? It is everything to do with Trading Asia because we are living in a connected world. I want to leave you with one last famous quote by Bruce Lee, one of I like. This is a poster that hangs on my son's bedroom. It says, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do." So I hope by the end of this conference, you will know, be willing, and of course, trade Asia. Okay, enjoy the rest of our symposium. Okay, thank you.